welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly Stevens. I'm the author of the young adult fantasy Firian Rising, and this is English Nerd. So as you can tell, I'm moving, in the process of moving. At least that bookshelf is a bit empty, but I figured I would still do a video. Today's video is all about some quick tips to make your world feel real. So this can be a fantasy world, as it is with what I tend to write. This can be any sort of world that you really want to come alive. Now, there are lots of tips out there about what you need to know before you start writing. I actually have a video all about the different elements of culture that if you touch on each one, then your world really feels completely fleshed out. But these are just some quick and dirty tips in the middle of writing to really bring life to your world. So here they are. First one is adding smell and taste. So often when people are describing things, they'll describe what it looks like first and maybe what it sounds like second. But if you add smell and taste, like what kind of foods these people eat and what the air smells like, then it can immediately transport somebody to that place. So that's something that I've kind of worked on. I don't include a ton of it in my book, but I touch on those things to kind of differentiate the cultures from each other. So I have one kingdom that kind of smells like cumin and flowers and has a more Arabian sort of palette to it. And then I have another place that is more like cinnamon and oranges and porridge and potatoes, and that's kind of the vibe there. So consider, what are some of the smells and tastes of your world? It's an easy way to really get somebody immediately invested in where they are. Okay, second one is have different people have different opinions about things. So if there's a historical event that they're talking about, they shouldn't all feel exactly the same way. If there's a big powerful figure out there, not everybody should feel identically about that particular person. So somebody who does this really well is Leigh Bardugo. If you've read the Shadow and Bone series, if you haven't, you should, because there's a Netflix series coming out, then you'll know that the Darkling, who's essentially the villain of the series, is really complex and interesting, and there are tons of different reactions that people have to him. Some are drawn to him, some are repulsed by him, some kind of change throughout the course of the series, but it's a great way to flesh out your world and create some character conflict as well. You can kind of come up with this on the fly if you're more of a pantser, as they say. Okay, speaking of kind of coming up with things on the fly, another way that you can make your world feel immediately more real is by having passing references to history. So that can be the history of the world or the history of the characters as well. You don't need to go into long anecdotes about everything that they've done in the past, but just referencing, oh gosh, remember that time, can automatically add layers to your world. So Harry Potter does this super well. They do it in terms of the characters and the world. If you think about the history of magic that Hermione will bring up as an example for something, then it fleshes out the world. If we didn't get any of that history, even just in passing, the world would not feel particularly real because it's far-fetched, obviously. But with that groundwork, it makes it easier to believe. Okay, and then the last one is pretty simple, and it's just a writing tip that's helpful in general. It's avoiding talking heads. When you have talking heads, that just means that you have a bunch of dialogue and there's not really a sense of place. One of the easiest ways to get out of that talking head syndrome is not by describing the whole room that they're in necessarily, but having them interact with it. So having dialogue interspersed with action. That action is going to tell us about the world, about the characters, without you having to pause and say, well, the structure was magnificent. You can have somebody go over and touch a picture frame, or just interact with the world in a way that feels natural to the character, and it gives us a glimpse into the world itself. So An author who does this super well is Marissa Meyer in The Lunar Chronicles. Cinder, if you just want to read that whole series, it's a great study in how to balance dialogue with even simple actions to flesh out exactly where you are, exactly who these people are. So those are some things that you can do. Obviously, you can plan a lot more in advance if you want to have a complete world that you're living in, but it can be kind of fun to also throw these things in on the fly. I did a lot of planning up front with the world for Firian Rising, but I didn't figure out everything in one sitting. It kind of grows in the telling, you know. And one of the ways that it grows is by doing these things, these 4 things that I just suggested as I'm going. So I hope these tips were helpful for you. I think if you do them, then your world will feel more real to your readers and probably even more real to you because you'll know it more intimately. And the good news is there's not a whole lot of planning involved. So anyway, like this video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe for more English nerdy goodness, and I'll see you on Monday. Bye.